Yumma, I'm Jack, and you're watching BTN. Here's what's coming up. We learn about the when, where, how, and why of Aussie elections. Get the lowdown on this asteroid. And find out more about animals in war. But first today, we're going to the doctor. Recently, both sides of politics promised to work towards making most doctor visits free by putting billions of dollars into Medicare. So, what is Medicare? Ren found out.
All right, what's happened here?
Dancing accident. I hurt my arm. I think it's broken.
Oh, yeah, looks expensive.
Expensive?
Well, you'll need an x-ray, and those machines cost a mint. And then you'll have to pay for the technician's time over there. Hello. Plus there's the nurses and the receptionist, and let me guess, you want some painkillers as well, do you?
Oh, that'd be great, actually, yeah.
Yeah, treating people who are sick or injured can be really expensive. Although in Australia, it's not something you necessarily have to think too much about when you go to hospital. And that's because of something called Medicare.
Medicare?
Oh yeah, Medicare is a system run by the government that pays for people's medical treatment.
Oh, do I have it?
Yeah, every Australian has it.
Oh, who pays for it then?
Well, you do.
Me.
And me.
You see, we all kind of pay for it. Medicare is funded by tax. In fact, it takes up a fair chunk of Australia's budget every year. But that wasn't always the case. For a long time in Australia, most people relied on private health insurance. You'd pay a company money and they'd cover the costs if you got sick. While the government did have different systems to help people who needed it, they were complicated. And people without private health insurance could be up for some big bills. So, in the 70s, the government set about changing that.
We would want to have a single public health insurance fund.
That was the Prime Minister at the time, Gough Whitlam, who introduced Australia's first universal healthcare scheme in 1975.
Medibank, the new Australian health insurance program, is a healthy change.
But it was controversial and faced opposition from some doctors, private health insurance companies and the opposition, which said it was too expensive, discouraged competition and put too much control in the hands of the government. Medibank was scrapped in 1981, before being brought back in 1984 as Medicare.
That every Australian, from newborn babe to Prime Minister, can share in the cheapest, simplest and fairest health insurance scheme Australia's ever had.
While private health insurance companies still exist, Medicare covers a lot of essential medical treatments. For example, going to hospital with a broken arm. It also covers some or all of your trip to the doctor, depending on whether they bulk bill. Bulk billing is when doctors and other health workers only charge what they get back from Medicare, which means for the patient, it's free. But over the years, the number of doctors who bulk bill has been dropping. Doctors say that's because Medicare doesn't pay them enough to run their business. Some people reckon that's a big problem, because if going to the doctor is expensive, fewer people will go, and that could lead to more serious medical problems. It's why last week, the government announced a big increase in the Medicare payments that go to doctors.
By 2030, we want 9 out of every 10 visits to the GP to be bulk billed.
Then the opposition leader said he'll do something very similar if he's elected.
The coalition government is committed to $9 billion worth of investment into our general practice network.
That's the most money that's been spent on Medicare in decades. Although some say it still won't be enough to guarantee that doctor visits are free. Still, many are hoping it will have a big impact on hospitals, doctors and the health of our country.
I'm just so relieved I don't have to pay. I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah, well look, I hate to break it to you, but this is still gonna hurt.
Can you name the world leader who had a very tense meeting at the White House with the US President and the Vice President?
Your country's in big trouble. Wait a minute. No, you've done a lot of talking.
It's Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He was invited to the US to talk about a possible deal to end the war in Ukraine, but things didn't go well.
You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards. You're buried there, your people are dying.
Afterwards, many world leaders expressed support for Zelensky, who then travelled to London for an emergency meeting with European leaders. Can you name the cyclone that's heading towards Queensland and New South Wales? Is it Alfred, Anthony or Alan? It's Alfred, and authorities are warning that it could cause a lot of damage.
A flood watch has been put in place for areas from the Mary River right through to the border and beyond.
It's actually the first time New South Wales has been put on cyclone alert since 1990. The streets of Sydney lit up on Saturday for the famous gay and lesbian Mardi Gras. Do you know when the first Sydney Mardi Gras was held? Was it 1958, 1978 or 1998?
2, 4, 6, 8. Gay is just as good as straight.
It was 1978. The first Mardi Gras was part celebration and part protest against discrimination. And it ended in arrests and violence. But since then, it's become one of the biggest and most famous events of its kind in the world.
We've come a long way, but there's still further to go, and we need to make sure that every Australian should feel safe.
Speaking of famous celebrations, do you know the nickname of these little gold statues that were handed out in Hollywood on Monday?
My whole family's here. I am floored.
They're Oscars, otherwise known as Academy Awards. This year's Oscar for Best Picture went to a film called Anora, while Best Actors were Adrian Brody and Mikey Madison.
Wow, this is very surreal.
As you might have noticed, Australia's politicians have been out and about more than usual and making some bigger than usual promises, which is usually a pretty good sign an election is coming up. So, when is it coming and what happens next? Nat found out.
Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton. They're about to go head-to-head to decide who gets to run the country for the next 3 years. But to do that, they won't be engaging in competitive martial arts. It's actually up to us, the Australian people, to vote for them at a federal election.
It's a big day when everyone in the country who's over 18 and enrolled to vote gets to have a say in who they want to be in charge by filling out these ballot papers and then popping them into these big boxes behind me to be counted.
In Australia, we don't actually vote for the Prime Minister. We vote for somebody to represent our local area or electorate in the lower house. And the leader of the party with the most people in the lower house ends up becoming our PM. We also vote for senators to represent our state or territory, with half of the Senate seats coming up for grabs every 3 years. Now, the big question everyone is asking is, when will this election actually happen?
Well, we can't give you an exact date because that's up to this guy, but he does have a few rules that he has to follow.
In Australia, elections happen every 3 years, and with the last election taking place in 2022, the Prime Minister has to pick a date before his 3 years in power are up.
But he can't leave it too long because a fair bit needs to happen before then. There has to be a minimum of 33 days between the PM calling the election and people actually voting.
Once he's got his date in mind, the PM will give the Governor-General a ring and let her know. Then it's her job to tell Parliament to wrap things up, and everyone in the House of Representatives is dissolved, meaning no more work. At that point, the government goes into caretaker mode.
This is a time when no new policy decisions are made, and things like entering into big contracts and important discussions with other countries don't usually happen. But these aren't hard and fast rules. They're just what usually happens, and previous governments have agreed to follow them. The next thing the Governor-General has to do within the next 10 days is sign an important legal document known as an election writ,
which has a bunch of important details on it, like the date of the election, the date the roll closes, and when candidates need to submit their nominations by. The writs also order the Australian Electoral Commission, or AEC, to begin the big job of running the election. The AEC has a big long list of everyone in Australia who's enrolled to vote, all 17.9 million of them. And after the writs are issued, Aussies only have 7 days to make sure they're on the roll and their details are up to date.
Now comes one of the most hectic parts of any election, for politicians at least: campaigning. Politicians start to pop up all over the place, on huge billboards, TV and radio ads, even on your feeds. It also starts to feel like we see the PM and opposition leader on the news every single day. Usually at events that are planned by politicians, where they can talk about whatever they want, and journalists get to ask them questions. In fact, some journos even get to ride on board the Polly's buses. And as you can imagine, all manner of odd things are caught on camera during the campaign.
That wasn't a deer, Prime Minister.
Then 3 days before the election, everything goes quiet for the pre-election media blackout. At least on mainstream media. On social media, you can bet you'll still be seeing a lot of these guys. And finally, the voting.
Where 18-odd million Aussies who are on the roll rock up to schools, churches and halls with their kids and their dogs to cast their vote. And while they're at it, they can usually pick up one of these delicious-looking sausages.
I'm kind of hungry now.
When was Australia's first federal election held? It was in 1901, the same year that Australia became a federation. Now to an asteroid that's been causing a bit of a fuss lately. Its name is 2024 YR4, and when it was discovered a few months ago, scientists said there was a very small chance it could collide with Earth in 2032. Then that very small chance got bigger and then smaller again. So what's going on? Here's Nat.
Oh, come on in, quickly, quickly. You don't want to be out there. Don't you know that there's an asteroid coming? It's this one over here. Asteroid 2024 YR4, and it could smash into Earth in 2032.
An asteroid is right now hurtling toward Earth. A record high chance of impact.
A city killer. It's a beautiful rock, and it's going to hurt.
What are the chances of that actually happening? Well, at first it was virtually 0. And then it was 1.2%, which soon jumped to 3.1%, the highest NASA has ever recorded for a space object of its size. But what's an asteroid, I hear you ask? Let me show you.
Well, our solar system is a messy place. There aren't just planets out there orbiting the sun, there are also chunks of rock, ice and dust, the leftover bits from the formation of our solar system billions of years ago. We call the little chunks meteoroids, the big icy chunks comets, and the big rocky chunks asteroids. Most asteroids, rather conveniently, live in a place between Mars and Jupiter known as the asteroid belt, but some can make their way a little closer to Earth,
where they can cause problems. Just ask the dinosaurs. Oh, what a lovely day it is today. The sun looks extra bright, don't you think? That's what scientists think happened to them 66 million years ago. And it wasn't the last asteroid to hit Earth. Most of them we didn't even notice because they burned up in our atmosphere. But others, we did.
In 1908, a huge explosion happened in the skies of Tunguska in Russia. The shockwave left a trail of destruction, including kilometres of flattened trees. In 2013, something similar happened when an asteroid the size of a house exploded over Chelyabinsk in Russia. It smashed windows, damaged buildings, and injured more than 1,000 people. But YR4 is a bit bigger, at 40 to 90 metres in diameter, about the size of a jumbo jet, similar to the Tunguska asteroid.
This is classified as a city destroyer, which means that it would destroy any large city on Earth.
So if that crashed into us, that wouldn't be good.
It's why scientists around the world are working hard to keep us safe from rogue space rocks like YR4, tracking them, measuring them, even redirecting them. In 2022, NASA's DART mission successfully crashed a spacecraft into an asteroid, changing its direction.
Many hope a similar technique could be used one day if we were ever faced with a situation where a hypothetical asteroid were to crash into the Earth or...
Dad, what are you doing here?
Nothing, just
You're hiding from the asteroid, aren't you?
Maybe.
You did hear that NASA and the European Space Agency significantly lowered the chance of an asteroid hitting Earth to less than 0.01%?
They did?
Yeah.
So it's probably not even going to hit Earth now?
Probably not.
Well, want some beans?
Sure.
We're from Walmart High School, and you're watching BTN!
Last week, a pair of very special dogs were given awards at the Australian War Memorial. They're both retired service dogs that served in the Australian military. And as Aidan found out, animals have a long history of helping humans in conflicts.
This is Manic. He's a Belgian-German Shepherd and a big deal in the Australian military. The Defence Force got Manic as a puppy, and he spent 6 years working alongside soldiers, including some time in the Middle East. Last week, Manic and his canine comrade Aslan became the first recipients of the Australian Animal Distinguished Service Award.
These dogs both are combat assault dogs, both trained with the 2nd Commando Regiment. They have served too, so it's a very special day for their bravery and their dedication.
There's nothing new about animals in the military. For as long as humans have been involved in conflict, there's been animals alongside them, hauling gear, attacking enemies, and protecting their humans. Lions, camels, and even elephants are some of the many creatures that have been called to enlist. Horses have been carrying people into battle for thousands of years, and in more modern wars, they've played a really important role.
Animal transport is an important means of getting things up the rock.
In 1916, camels carried Australian troops through the deserts of Egypt and Palestine.
Very few, if any, of the Australians detailed for the Corps knew anything about camels. They learned quickly, however.
Donkeys were also used to carry weapons and supplies, and sometimes wounded soldiers, like the famous donkey of John Simpson, who became a legend for his heroism on the beaches of Gallipoli.
The poignant story of Simpson bringing out the wounded on his donkey.
But armies like a good mix of talls and smalls. And the humble pigeon has also played a big role in many conflicts. They have an excellent sense of direction and have been used to deliver messages on the battlefield for centuries. In 1907, there was an inventor who tried pigeon photography, hoping to get a literal bird's eye view of the battlefield. Although it really didn't take off, pigeons did a lot in the First and Second World Wars. In fact, the first animals to win the Dickon Award, which is the UK's highest military honour for animals, were pigeons, who helped save the crew of a sinking plane by flying 200 kilometres to a military base. Cats have also had a long history in the military, catching rats on ships and in trenches. Then of course there are dogs. They've sent urgent messages, delivered items like first aid kits, and sniffed out landmines. They've also been there to lift morale and make people smile. In fact, all sorts of pets have acted as military mascots, whose main job is to keep soldiers company. Animals are still a really important part of the armed services, whether it's helping soldiers on the battlefield or helping them in their life after conflict. And it's why many say it's important to recognise the contribution of animals, which don't choose to serve but still save lives. This new award isn't just for military animals, and its creators are hoping it grows each year to include different species doing different jobs, so that we humans have another chance to say thank you to the animals that serve Australia.
For the second year, the National Rugby League season kicked off in Las Vegas. In front of a crowd of more than 45,000, the Canberra Raiders started their season off right, smashing the New Zealand Warriors 30-8.
Raiders have 3!
It was then the Australian Jillaroos' turn to impress the US crowd. They took on England and won by a whopping 90-4. The clash made history as the first ever women's game of any sport to be played at the stadium. Over to some more history making. The young Socceroos have clinched their first ever AFC Under-20 Asian Cup win. It was quite a dramatic final against Saudi Arabia, with the scores locked at 1-1. The game ended with a nail-biting penalty shootout, where the Aussies came out on top.
So words don't describe the feeling. First Australian team in youth football to win the Asian Cup.
And finally, some Aussies have won gold on the slopes. Cameron Bolton and Josie Baff nabbed Australia's first ever World Cup gold medal in the mixed team snowboard cross in Turkey.
He gave me the perfect amount of lead that I needed. It worked out really well for us today.
While Laura Peel picked up her 4th World Cup win of the season in Kazakhstan, winning gold in the latest leg of the aerial skiing competition.
March is Women's History Month, and to celebrate over the next few weeks, we'll be telling you the stories of some Australian women who helped to change history. This week, our rookie reporter Zara has looked into the amazing life of Dame Nellie Melba.
This is the voice of one of the most famous opera singers of all time, Dame Nellie Melba. She was born Helen Mitchell in Richmond, Melbourne in 1861. But her family called her Nellie. Her dad was a businessman named David Mitchell, and her mum Isabella was a talented musician who passed her skills on to her daughter. Nellie would sing, hum and whistle everywhere she went. And when she was 6, she convinced her parents to let her sing at a school fundraiser. As she grew, Nellie knew what she wanted to be, a singer. But when her baby sister and mother died suddenly, her father moved to Mackay in Queensland, away from her singing teacher. Nellie eventually got married and had a son, but she wasn't happy. And later she decided to move to Europe to chase her dreams. As an amateur from Australia, she found it hard to find a singing teacher. But Nellie kept trying, until one day she walked into the school of the great opera teacher, Mathilde Marchesi. She recognised Nellie's talent and worked on helping her become a star. Nellie changed her last name to honour the city where she grew up, Melbourne. Nellie Melba's debut was in Brussels, where she played Gilda in Rigoletto. She let her dark hair shine in braids, instead of wearing the blonde wig Gildas usually wore. Before long, Nellie Melba became a household name. She sang for kings, queens, princes and princesses. And on her first tour of Australia, thousands of people came to see the country's first international celebrity. When World War I broke out, Nellie raised thousands of pounds for wounded soldiers and their families, earning her the title of Dame. In 1920, she became the first celebrity to perform on the radio. Despite her wealth and celebrity, Nellie never forgot where she came from. And in 1922, she organised a series of low-cost concerts in country towns so that everyone could get a taste of the opera. Nellie kept performing until the last year of her life, which she spent at home in Australia. Today she is still remembered and celebrated as one of the greats who put Australia on the map and inspired generations to let their voices be heard.
Well, that's all we've got for you, but we'll be back next week with more. And in the meantime, you can jump on our website to check out more stories, quizzes and resources for your teachers. Oh, and Newsbreak will be here every weeknight. Have an awesome week, and I'll see you next time. Bye!